If you're familiar with the way the framing systems work in the WinBidPro version 15 program, there's some things that you still need to know in particular as far as the difference between elevation framing systems and the default framing systems. So we talked about in other videos the default framing systems, which is accessible through this framing systems link here on the menu tree. And this gives you the entire list of framing systems for that manufacturer. Whichever manufacturer you selected. Now you can, as you may recall, you can edit, delete, add new framing systems. You can change the part numbers in certain frame systems, all that type of thing here. So, and anytime you do that, this list of systems will remain unchanged unless you go in and edit one of the systems. So when you pick one of these systems for a new job, it picks up all those parts and settings that you've made or that have been made by the person that configured this catalog. So the original configuration. So keep that in mind. Anytime you pick from this list, any new elevation that you create with this framing system will just pick all the settings that are already there. Now once you've created your job and you've added elevations to it, and you've already picked a system from this list over here, you have access to the same exact windows that you would see, or the same screens that you would see by clicking this framing system button, only you're working with a discrete copy of that elevations framing system. So any changes you make when you click Elev Frame Sys here in the menu tree under Elevations, or this Edit Elev Frame Sys button here, any changes you make in this window that comes up that has all the frame settings, all the part numbers, all the gaskets, all the miscellaneous parts, all those settings here are unique to this one elevation that you're viewing right now. So any change you make, whether it's it has a subsill, and let's say we make it a 1/4 inch profile on this subsill, any changes like that will be unique to this one elevation. And sometimes if you notice it doesn't redraw, let's say it didn't draw our subsill. I'm going to zoom in here and we can see there's no subsill right now. So sometimes it doesn't draw it right away, so you have to manually click this redraw button. Now if I zoom in, I can see I've got my 1/4 inch subsill. I can even see my dimension over here on the right. So I've got my standard sill material here, my fillers, and then I've got my subsill. And so that's something to keep in mind. Once you've changed this elevations framing system, it's affecting only this elevation. So let's say you've created a job and you've created 10 elevations, and you just went ahead and picked the framing system here from this main list, and you just kept going and repeated the same framing system every elevation you add. Now that's good, except if you go and you decide, oh, I want to make a change to the sill and I want it to apply to the entire job. The problem is if you make that change here, it's only applying to this elevation. So then you would have to skip to the next elevation, make the exact same change, skip again, make the same change, and keep going until you're done with all the elevations. Now the alternative to that is you go back and you create either a new framing system that's a copy. Notice there's a copy button. I can make a copy of a system here, an identical copy, and just go in and change a couple things. And I can change the description of the system so that it reflects the changes I've made, so that I can pick it from the list easily. Now if you do that, let's say you copy a system, make a few changes, then what you'd want to do is apply that new system to your job. So I would go to my jobs window here, I'd say change frame, and I would go to that new system that I fixed. Either it's an existing system or a brand new one. Either way, you just pick the system, you hit select, and it's going to apply that new system to the entire job. The only downside of this is, let's say you've created a job with 15 elevations, 5 of them are one system, 5 another, and the remaining 5 yet a third system. If you try and do something like this where you say change frame and apply it to the entire job, it's going to make that job one system again. So it will no longer be 3 separate framing systems. So then you would have to go in and edit each elevation and then change the framing system for each elevation. And I would do that by clicking Elevations, and I would hit Edit Settings, and then I would hit Select Frame. and I can change the framing system here on an individual elevation. So that way you're applying new parts and new settings to just one elevation in the job. So between those things, you should be able to accomplish everything you need as far as having a variety of systems, making changes and applying them to certain elevations, and so forth. Now, one last very important point here is if you make changes to an elevation framing system like I did with this first elevation, every elevation you add after that, and when you pick that system again, let's say it's going to use that exact same system, and I name this like second elevation, it's going to pick up whatever changes you made in that previous elevation. So even though it says frame ID 52, it's really picking up the parts and settings from the previous elevation that uses that frame. So then when I go ahead and add my settings, add my dimensions and panels and things, it's got the settings, whatever I made in the previous elevation. So keep that in mind, because that'll help you manage which elevations get what settings and which don't. And a little confusing at first, but you can see the power in it once you get used to how it works.